Welcome back, college baseball fans, to another episode of ACC Central. I've got a really special guest coming on here now. It's Jarrod Saltalamacchia, a 12-time MLB veteran and a 2013 World Series champion, now with the Miami Hurricanes. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
I appreciate you having me. This is great.
Absolutely. Can you talk, before we get into getting into specifics, can you talk a little bit about your coaching journey and how you ended up at Miami in your first year there? I know you've got some experience. Obviously, you had 12 years in Major League Baseball. You had 5 years on the Cape, but talk to me a little bit about your coaching journey specifically.
Yeah, so I've kind of hit everything. I mean, obviously playing pro ball, and then as soon as I retired, I didn't know what to do. So Brad Wilkerson was at the King's Academy, and my kids were getting ready to go in there. So it's a local Christian high school down in West Palm Beach, and so I jumped in there to help him out. He ended up jumping into college baseball, so I stuck around, coaching the high school kids. I did travel ball for 1 year just to give it a shot, and realized that's not the route for me. So I was doing that for a little while and kind of felt that, my skill set needed a little bit more challenge, I guess. So I went to the college out in the Cape Cod League, enjoyed that, did that for 4 years, as you said earlier. Three with Bourne and then one with Falmouth. I enjoyed every second of it, loved it. You're getting the best of the best athletes out there from all over the country that are just sponges. They want to learn. They want to, soak up whatever information you can give them in such a short time. We were lucky enough to win 2 years in a row, and then the third year we came in second. And then last year, managing at Falmouth for the first time was a great experience. I enjoyed it, but the opportunity to coach at Miami came up, which I was ecstatic about because it's close to home. For one, for two, I've known Laz for many, many years. Our pitching coach, Laz Gutierrez, and he's a phenomenal human being. On that human side, but he's also a great pitching coach as well. And then I got to meet JD, and the first time I met him, I knew, I'm like, this is the guy that you can build a dynasty, a program, a culture with, because he's a player's coach. He's been around the game for so many years, so he knows the ins and outs, but he still understands that it's a human playing the game, and these are kids. So he makes it enjoyable to show up every day and compete.
Absolutely, and it's really exciting to have you here with your experience and everything you bring to the table. You didn't go play college baseball, but you were committed to the late great Mike Martin at Florida State, and he actually advised you to go pro, right? If you're a first round draft pick, something like that, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, he told me, he said, "Listen, if you go first round, I can't blame you. Take the money, go start your career, but would you commit to us if you win the second round?" And I thought about it for like half a second. I was like, "Yeah, that's not a problem." I mean, honestly, I didn't think I was going first round anyways, so I figured I'm gonna have to go to college and continue my career. But I was just fortunate and blessed enough to get drafted first round, and I didn't call Martin, but Jamie Shoup was there as our recruiting guy, and that was probably a tenth of a second phone call because he was a little upset, which he probably should have been because he probably didn't think I was going first round either. So, but yeah, started my career.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's some of the connections you've had to some ACCs. Obviously, you replaced a legend in Boston, and Jason Varitek, who was a Georgia Tech legend, and then you were also involved in a trade for a Georgia Tech legend early with the Mark Teixeira trade. That's my first. It's amazing because you were a big prospect, but your name also the uniqueness of your name and the length of it made it stick in my mind even when I was younger in that trade. That's a Mark trade, but talking about that 2013 Red Sox team, they were known for the culture and unique characters. You guys went from last in 2012 to first and World Series champions in 2013. The beards were a big part of that, right? I believe there were nicknames for the beards, right? You were the Saltine.
Yeah, I didn't get involved with that. I think that was more for marketing schemes. But yeah,
How important is culture to a team's success at any level? I mean, team chemistry feels a little underrated in baseball versus some of the other sports.
yeah, I think a lot of people get lost in the professional sports and how these guys are so talented. They're the one percenters. So you watch these guys who are phenomenal athletes going out there on a day-to-day basis, putting up these numbers, and you're like, oh, this game can't be that hard. And a lot of people forget that this game is very, very difficult, especially at the pro level. You're playing 162 games, and that's just during the regular season. 6 weeks of spring training, and then the playoffs start, and you get done end of October, November. And then you go home and you start all over again. So you're on the road, you're away from your family. So it takes a more of a mental grind than anything, and then those mental, grinds can become physical. So I mean, I think that the importance of having fun, doing what you do, what you love, and having fun and being around guys that all, kind of their goals align is very, very important. And I think that's why I kind of gravitate towards college, because I think college is still that aspect of, hey, we want to win. This is about winning. You watch some of the pro sports, and it's more about, hey, let's make some money. Or what kind of marketing deal can we do? I mean, you see the Tampa Bay Rays being sold for over $1 billion, which is like unheard of. So it makes you think, okay, the Dodgers, Red Sox, what are they going for? Where's the ceiling?
Absolutely, and you already touched on one of the questions I was getting ready to ask you. What made you go with the amateur coaching route rather than the professional, given you probably had, opportunities for both? And you've obviously touched on it a little bit with that, but was there anything else, that made you really want to embrace the amateur coaching route rather than, professional, whether that be major league or minor league?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables. One that sticks out to me the most is the fact that you're actually able to coach the player, and they're still kids, so they still have a lot to learn. Their goal is to get where you were at, so they're open to anything and everything. So they want to be coached. Where I think at the pro level, a lot of the guys are there now, so they're going to stick to what got them there, and they're going to try and survive. So and there is still a team aspect to the college side of things. So I think that was what drew me there the most. And obviously just coaching on the Cape, seeing how much fun it is to win, and it just brought me back to those days of 13, but really the amateur days of high school baseball. You're competing for a state championship, or we didn't play 1,000 tournaments a summer like these kids do now. So trophies don't mean as much, but to me they do. Winning is very important. I think it's a bridge for your foundation, to grow and become a better human in society, because baseball doesn't last forever. You can be retired at 30 or 40.
Absolutely, and it's interesting you brought up, the Cape kind of being your intro there. A lot of people forget that the object is still to win up there, because I know a lot of people look at it as a way for, these guys to work on things and continue things, but they're competitive people. They want to win. I really enjoyed watching your Falmouth team last year. I know you guys didn't win as much as you would have liked, but that offense was a lot of fun to watch. You had a couple ACC guys there, the two Schmidts, one for, Kent Schmidt at Georgia Tech, Carl at Cal. You had Ryan Zuckerman, who's now at Georgia Tech, Mark Quattrani, who was a guy I got to first see because he's going to Notre Dame now. You had David
Hmm.
and before he got drafted. What was it like, coaching some of these guys and kind of getting, some absolute studs who maybe a lot of people didn't necessarily know about, before they got up there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's to me the perfect example of, talent doesn't always win. That's the culture part of it, where you have to build a culture together, and it's tough to do that in a 10-week frame, especially when you have kids that are there just to get to the draft, and then draft hits, they leave. So you got a whole new set of guys. But yeah, I mean, if you looked at our lineup, front to top to bottom, I mean, we were by far had the best numbers offensively. I think we had the most stolen bases, most runs scored. Our pitching was best in the first 2, 3 weeks of the season. Then we kind of flattened out. But it's those late inning games, the eighth or ninth inning where you're tied, you're down by one. It's like, who wants it more? At the end of the day, some guys were checked out and they said, hey, this doesn't really matter. I'm here just to kind of get my draft status up. And that's all personal. You can't change that. They've got to want to change themselves. So you got to try and find a guy or two that are the leaders of the group, that are going to lead by example and are going to go out there and prove it day in, day out. And then you're either going to buy in or you're not, and then that's where, as a head coach and the coaching staff, we've got to kind of design our lineup around those guys, and it's tough. These kids, I didn't realize how long of a year it is for them, especially the fall being 6 weeks of grinding. And then you get a little time off and it's back into it in January. By the time your season ends, you're on a flight. Instead of going home packing and relaxing, you're going back out to the Cape. So yeah, it is 10 weeks, but it's really turned into a 10-month season.
Absolutely, and on top of that, they're going to classes, I presume. It's interesting because, the Cape, I feel like, it's gotta be one of the harder jobs for a baseball coach out there, especially the modern Cape game where you've got so much turnover, but you've also gotta be communicating a lot with some of the, the coaches of these players to make sure you're not overusing them or using them in a way that doesn't help them and whatnot. So, what are some of those bigger challenges like coaching in the Cape and managing of players while you're also just trying to do a normal job?
From what I've seen, there's two type of managers, kind of three type, but two main type of managers out there. There's the ones that are just kind of, take them for what it is. They want to win, and they're going to give guys opportunities and they're going to play everybody, which, every team does that. But it's not an emphasis on winning. It's more like, hey, this is my job. I'm showing up. I'm here for you if you need me. Let's go see what happens. And then you got the other side of it, which is where I was at with Bourne, and Scott does an unbelievable job out there. Is Scott Landers? He is an unbelievable recruiter. I mean, this guy is on the phone. He's got stuff set up for when guys leave from out in, the Wood Bat League or the Woodlands. He's got guys in the Valley League. I mean, he's got guys ready to go. So whenever one guy leaves, he's already be able to take care of him. I mean, it's unbelievable. This guy, I don't have that kind of time, and I really just wanted to focus on my guys. But he does a good job of getting good coaches in that can coach so he can focus on that stuff. So I think that if somebody were able to get someone to recruit and get the players out there, I think those are the teams that are going to be successful.
Absolutely. It's always I'm always trying to cut some of the cape remotely, and it's just trying to keep track of who's where and what's going. It gets tricky, but let's talk a little bit more about your coaching philosophy and as you're developing a little bit and kind of your inspirations there. We'll start. What is your coaching philosophy? How do you kind of there's obviously a lot of you talked about there's different types of managers, but what's your philosophy? What do you prefer to do? Are you really hands on with the guys?
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm more of a hands-on. I mean, even though every year, I guess I look back and see I'm a little further removed than I thought I was. But I've during the fall, I put some shin guards on. I caught guys in the bullpen, just trying to feel what it feels like. Anytime I ask a guy to do a drill, I don't try and ask him to do something I've never done. So if it's something new to me, I'll get in the cages early and try it out and see how it feels and understand how to teach it. But I think that this game hasn't changed in over 100 plus years. So why try and reinvent the wheel? Let's get the fundamentals and the basics down. You still have to catch the ball, you have to present it, you have to throw it to the bases. That hasn't changed. So let's not invent a new way to do that. Let's just make sure we can do it fundamentally sound to where we're accurate and we're consistent. Then when it comes to that, it's a relationship. These guys got to trust you, so you have to have those conversations with them to let them know that you're not there to collect a paycheck. You're there for them to help them get to their goal. Having the background I've got, it's been easier to kind of connect with guys because they understand I've been there and done it. So I don't have to go through a lot of the hoops. But at the same time, the game's changed. So, the one knee style is not something I did. So I had to learn how to teach that and coach that. And then you got 3 different body types. Then you got 3 different personalities. So that's the part of the game that I like, dealing with pitchers and personalities. So it's comes naturally, but it's still a very big challenge.
Absolutely. And who do you view as like a mentor or someone you try and emulate? Obviously, you've gotten to interact with tons of coaches over your career, both as a player and coach. I'm sure there's a number of them, and I'm just curious who's really kind of inspired your kind of coaching philosophy and ability.
That's tough. I did have a lot of really good managers, and a lot of them are different in their own way. Typically those guys have 100 years of experience, so they might have been a lot like me when they were younger. Eager and excited, and maybe make some mistakes here and there. But Bobby Cox was phenomenal as far as a manager, players manager. You knew he had your back. So I always told myself, like, I'm going to make sure every player on my team knows I have their back. I'm there for them. And then as a coach, I need to do the same, so whether that's argue an umpire or, be honest with a kid. So that's one of them. But I always grew up watching Jason Varitek, as we said earlier, so the opportunity I never said take over his position, but even though he did, and he told me flat out, he was like, listen, you're the captain now, you're the leader on the field, you're going to lead this meeting. I'm like, dude, you're the captain. I'm not going to take over. He's like, yes, you are. And he told everyone, hey, listen to Salty. He knows what he's doing. So that transition was easy. So I try and emulate a lot of the things he did. He's very, very thought oriented, very empathetic with the players and understand what they're going through. Not just say, hey, why the hell can't you throw a strike? Well, you don't think he's trying to throw a strike? Let's figure out some other stuff of what's going on in the mind to make him, get there. So just being realistic and humble is definitely a priority.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, but what's it been like working under JD? I mean, you talked about first meeting him, but JD seems like a player's coach. Everyone that I've talked to loves him, and he seems like a wonderful human being. What's it been like working under him?
He is, man. He is absolutely phenomenal. I've leaned on him a lot, just being new and not understanding a lot of the rules and different things like that. But even as far as like dealing with some personalities, like, hey man, like What do you think I should say? Because in the high school level, you know who's going to be your starter. You know who your dudes are. Everybody does. So I assume college, you kind of know that too. But there's a different mindset. You can't let them know that it's their job. They have to earn it. I mean, they have to. Everybody has to earn that to go into spring. So it doesn't matter if you're Cuvée, or if you're Gary Bennett or Bennett Gary. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like you have to earn what's there in front of you. So that's something he's big on. He sets a standard. I know last year they were one game short of the World Series, and that is a great accomplishment, and everyone was excited about it. But I've never seen players more hungry than they are right now. Just that one game. Like could they have won a game, earlier in the season to put them in a better position to play? Who knows? But could they have done something in that game? Take the extra base. Make a different pitch. Like that's what they have to think about going into the season. So they're hungry, and the standard isn't just get one game short. It's to get in the World Series and win it. And that's the standard that we have set, that JD has set with his coaching staff, and he has made it known to each one of us that we have a job, and that's what we need to do. Don't focus on someone else's job, focus on your job, and let's go out there and be the best we can be.
Absolutely. And your job title on the site says Director of Program Development. It sounds like you're working a lot with the catchers, but is there anything specific that that kind of title entails, or are you just an assistant that's kind of, you're focused on the catchers, but you're roving around a bit?
Yeah, I think it's a catching coach would be the more official title. I am in charge of placing guys for the summer because I've done it for the past few years, so that's easier. But I think that yeah, it's just catching coach, and he's asked me to help him out during games if I see something, say something type of thing, in game experience stuff like that. But my job and what I want to do is make sure that our catchers are not better than they were last year because that is important, but to be the best in all of college baseball, not ACC, not SEC, but make them to the best of their ability so they go out there and they help their team win. It's not personal goals. We're not looking for our batting average to be a certain thing or our, catching rate or whatever they want to call these things now. There's 1,000 different catching statistics, but it's how many wins. Because at the end of the day, that's the only one that matters is that win column. How many wins do we have?
Absolutely. And talking about the catcher position, obviously it's the most important player position in MLB because you're doing a lot. You're calling the games, you're handling the pitching staff. It's a little bit different between what an MLB catcher needs to do to succeed and what a college catcher needs. Although the college catcher is still really important. What are the differences in kind of managing a staff as a college catcher versus an MLB catcher?
Yeah, I think there is a difference, but I think it's tougher in the college realm. I think that, you know, pro players have over 1,000 games under their belt or, however many innings. It used to be catchers need to have at least 1,600, at bats or 1,600 innings in order to get called to the big leagues because that is the last thing to come. Catching is the last to develop. It always has been. It always will be because you have so much to do. You have to not only call a game, but you have to understand why you're calling a certain pitch so you can set up a little further out or further in, know what hitter's up, what hitter's on deck. So I know, hey, we can't miss over the middle of the plate with a man on second with first base open and a lefty on the mound, lefty on deck. All right. So I'm going to make sure yeah, the pitching coach is calling pitches, but the catcher has to be aware they have to work together. Then you have obviously class and schoolwork to do, but you have to understand what the defensive plays are, the offensive plays are. You have to have a good at bat. You have to get your work in the cages when you can. I felt terrible for the guys in the fall because it's like we have 15 bullpens a day, it seems like, and then you got defensive work, and you may get 10 minutes in the cages to get your hitting in. And some of these guys have been known for offensive guys, so it's really new to them, and they've got to learn how to deal with that at a young age while trying to put a name for themselves so they can get drafted because that's the ultimate goal. After college baseball.
And let's talk a little bit about those catchers. You got one of my favorites that have come that's transferring into Miami from NC State, Alex Sosa. He's a guy that I know is known for his offense, but he's got a cannon behind the plate. You got a freshman in Alonso Alvarez, and I believe Jackson Hughes is a catcher as well. So you've got a really nice balance there. You've got the star power with Alex Sosa. You got the freshman potential with Alvarez, and then you got the crafty veteran with Hughes behind the plate. How are you feeling about those three catchers, and what are they bringing to the table?
I mean, I feel phenomenal. I just working with all. I mean, Sosa and Hughes are obviously the veteran guys. They've been around. They've got enough time. They understand the game's going to be easier for them to slow down. Alvarez is a high prospect big kid, reminds me of myself a lot because he's tall, lanky, prospect is what he is. He had a phenomenal fall. I mean, his strides were, above and beyond everyone else's, but he was coming from playing high school shortstop. He didn't get a lot of time behind the plate, so he was learning a lot of stuff. But I think for him to have, and he's kind of, grasped onto Sosa and those guys have become really close. They all are close, but those two especially, have really worked well together. I've seen them helping each other out, talking to each other. Sosa's very advanced when it comes to receiving, very advanced when it comes to the IQ of the game and understanding the situations. Still has some to learn like everyone else, but obviously his bat speaks for itself, and that's going to be very, very potent in our lineup. But I told him, I said, listen, dude, we know you can hit. Everyone knows that, I said, so do you want to be known as an offensive minded catcher or defensive minded? I said, because I can tell you, offensive minded catchers, you're going to have to hit 350 every year and put 20, 30 homers together. And that's a lot of pressure on yourself. I said, but if you can be a defensive minded catcher that helps your team win games and go out there and just be free at the plate and put up the numbers you've been doing, dude, you're a top two, rounder easily, and he's bought in from day one. He's always been bought in. He's a huge Miami guy as well. So I think that this is a great fit and he's happy. And I think those three guys are going to complement each other.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I know I was a big fan of Griffin Hughes last year, the Miami Ace. Now we still got a Hughes there, so that's why I was excited. Jackson also in, but talking about this Miami lineup, particularly, what's it been like watching somebody like Daniel Cuvée as a hitter because he's a special college talent.
He is very, very special. It was actually put to me in a perfect way. Like, we thought this kid was good, and then you get to see him every day and you realize he's really good. Um, and it just comes so naturally. His routine in the cages is a lot like big league guys that I play with. It's not, hey, let me swing as hard as I can, see how hard I can hit it or far I can hit it. It's I have a routine. I'm trying to work on something. He tries to think along with the pitcher and understand what they like to do. So he's advancing that. He'll take his singles if he needs to get a single. He's not always trying to hit the home run. He hit one in spring and fall that was like 420 or 430 dead center. And he comes in, he says, man, I didn't get that good enough. Don't ever say that to me again because you just went dead center, 420. It wasn't springtime and the wind's blowing out. You put a charge into that. So that's all you need. If it's 399, then you need 400. That's it. But he's a perfection when it comes to that. And obviously our defense has gotten a lot stronger as well, which I'm sure you'll speak on. But adding those guys behind the plate, adding Vance, Sheehan, obviously our center fielder, in my opinion, is probably one of the best center fielders in the country, and I mean that goes for professional guys too. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, the couple times that I got to see Torres and also Fabio Peralta, who was also very good defensively. I think there were a couple times where they were at UVA and they did get swept, but watching those guys making plays, and I'm like, these are freshmen. They're unbelievably defensively. It's a lot of fun to watch the lineup and the position players because last year I feel like the lineup wasn't quite as strong, but now it looks elite. Aside from Cuvée, is there anybody that stood out for you in terms of offensive potential so far?
Well, I mean, trying to think who else we have. I mean, honestly, it's a complete lineup 1 through 9 because we did add more speed, and I think it just all depends. I think that the fall we did a really good job of talking to hitters and telling them, listen, let's have an approach, and we're not just going to try and get many home runs and launch angles and stuff. Let's minimize the launch angle, and get more, exit velo, I guess, and that's the way you create further balls. But we have to do what it takes to get the job done. If there's a man on second, we got to get him over. So it's a real emphasis on the fundamentals of game of getting runs. We had highlight videos of Torres and Fabio and those guys and what they did last year going first to home, on a wild pitch, by just taking that extra base and then they make a mistake and you're able to score. Being ready when their defense isn't ready. We're going to have to manufacture runs at all times. It doesn't matter if it's the first inning, if we're up by 7, we got to continue to step on the gas and make sure we're up by 15. You know what I mean? So that was a big emphasis. And I think our lineup is built around that, where guys will take those hits the other way and take to get them over, bunts, stuff like that. And then hopefully our pitching can keep us into games and, we'll be right where we need to be at the end.
Absolutely. And is there anybody that's maybe a little bit under the radar besides that 1 through 9 that might be able? I mean, I know there's a number of freshmen that might be there. Brandon Degote, if he's, and Fabio Peralta may not be in that starting mix so far projected wise, but they're right there. Is there anybody that's kind of, had an incredible fall that might be pushing, that maybe might be a little radar?
I think a guy there's a few guys, I think Braylon West will be a guy to watch just because he's always hit everywhere he's gone. I know he hasn't been at, a Power 4 conference, so it's gonna be different. Those Friday night guys aren't gonna be what he's used to facing, but because he's not a power guy per se, even though he's got the power, he's a contact guy. He's gonna find ways. I think Keenan Copeland's a guy to watch. For me, he impressed me in the fall. Big power guy, but he's able to kind of change his swing and his stride to put no stride and just put the ball in play. So he was impressive. Gary Bennett is another, young guy that, I mean, he had over 400 for the fall. So it just seemed like every time the guy got up to the plate, he got a hit. And we're like, geez, dude. There's a bunch of guys. I think Torres made huge strides. I know last year he started off, a little slow and then heated up, and I think he kind of is starting where he ended, and not trying to home runs, just put the ball in the play. Hey, dude, you're fast. You need to get on base and you need to run. And so I mean, this fall he spent a lot of time stealing, and in spots you shouldn't steal, but he wanted to work on it, which is great. So I think all around, it's a very balanced lineup.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see you guys in action. One of the downsides of not being anywhere near Miami during the fall is I don't have any opportunity to see you guys, so I got to depend on other people and talking to people. Really excited to see you guys. One last question before we go on. I try to end it on a fun note. Maybe what was the highlight of your summer as head coach of the Falmouth Commodores? Was there a specific highlight that really really stood out to you?
Man. I tell you, I love being at the park, and we had some characters, so just seeing those guys on a like my lingo is not the same as it was when I was younger. So, I mean, I've got four daughters, one's in college, one's going to college. So, I do hear a lot of this, lingo, I guess, and words that don't make any sense to me. So I'm trying to learn from them to be cool around the guys. I mean, I quickly got lost in that. So these guys were saying things, and I'm just like, "What are you talking about?" But the way they're able to have fun. I mean, at one point we were really starting to struggle with the bat, so I was like, "Listen, guys, let's just go to the field, no shirts, BP off the machine, and we're just going to go shirtless and let's just have fun." So I think just the everyday experience with those guys, I went and bought a bunch of like black lights and strobe lights and stuff, and put it in the clubhouse. And when we won, big speaker and just go nuts. Just trying to help these kids enjoy the experience a little more because as I said earlier, this game goes fast. You will have to retire soon, whether it's on your terms or their terms. And then you got to figure out what you can do with the rest of your life. And hopefully, it's a long life to go. So have fun while you can.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I love covering the college games. It seems they're a little bit looser to have that fun. And the dreams are still intact. So I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you want to say before I let the audience go?
No, I'm just excited for this year. I think we're going to fill the stands pretty nicely. And I think that there's a lot of excitement around the campus right now with football, and I'm excited for those guys. I'll be rooting for them. I'll be our 12th man and against A&M. How about that? But go Canes, and I'm excited to get this thing started.
Absolutely. I'm sure they'll sell a lot of milkshakes for baseball as well. Uh,
I won't have those.
Dangerous. But we'll be back after the break, after Christmas, with more coaches interviews. Until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and go Canes.